Hello, and welcome to Warhammer 40k's Grim History from the Beyond. I'm Zeckthar,
And I'm Yuksen.
and we are the chroniclers of all that was and all that will be in the 41st millennium. We've seen the rise and fall of many empires, and this month we'll be discussing the Traitor Marines, known as the Iron Warriors. Iron within, iron without.
Indeed, this month we will chronicle how they came to be, their traits in war, and of course, notable characters. Well, Zeckthar, what are we going to be talking about this week?
Well, this week we'll be getting into the character of the Legion. And what better way to show this than through some of their greatest campaigns? Now, I figured the best way to describe what kind of soldiers these men are, we have to go back quite a ways to their very first true battle after Perturabo took over. Now, Yuksen briefly went over the engagement known as the Fall of the Black Judges, but I figured we should delve into it a little bit more.
Why?
Well, for starters, it's a great story. But more importantly, it shows the tenacity and stubborn will of the Iron Warriors. Whether you despise Perturabo or not, the decimation of his warriors had the desired effect. They trained harder, fought harder, and did not dare to retreat even in the face of horrific odds. Perturabo had hardened his troops to a point that they were just like him, callous and hard. And thus the saying, iron within, iron without, was born. He would test their mettle against the Black Judges and the Maritara cluster, bringing it forcibly back into imperial compliance. Taking his newly constituted expeditionary fleet, Perturabo drove straight for the heart of the cluster and the hostile power he knew resided there. On Olympia, the enemy Perturabo sought had been little more than legend, but the last time their shadow had fallen on that world, their coming had led to the slaughter and enslavement of tens of thousands before they demanded tribute was paid. They were the self-styled Black Judges, self-appointed arbiters of human purity, life, and death. Twisted and withered creatures that had once been human in ages past, they had extended their lifespans into Terran millennia with the help of technology as ancient as it was dark. Now their shriveled and time-ravaged forms were encased in mechanized war machines controlled by cybernetic implants. In order to continue to live, they required regular infusions of fresh human genetic material, acquired by an agonizingly fatal extraction process. And from their base upon a barren, raven-hollowed moon known as the Rock of Judgment, they held sway over dozens of nearby human-inhabited worlds through terror, offering a devil's bargain of protection from Xenos assault in return for a regular tribute of the young and healthy. The Fourth Legion, reeling from its punishment at its new master's hands, was shamed into a desperate desire to prove itself for its Primarch, and it was to be the Black Judges that were to suffer its pent-up hatred and wrath. The orbital assault on the Rock of Judgment was a direct and brutal affair, well defended by defense laser batteries and swarms of drone fighter craft, and the Black Judges' own warp-capable battleships. It had withstood marauders and vengeful enemies for millennia, but against the fury of the Fourth Legion, it could not prevail. Smashing through the blockade line of warships, heedless of the losses they incurred, with a score of Legion strike cruisers and a dozen battle barges burned from stem to stern, the Legion grappled their foe at close quarters, launching crippling boarding axes and barrages of melta warhead torpedoes at point-blank range. With the line broken, the Fourth Legion fleet pushed through, using the armored prows of their largest capital ships and the bulwark void shields of siege frigates to weather the storm of ground fire and force a landing. Although their true technology carried with it much of the strength of mankind's mastery over the stars before the Age of Strife, the Black Judges were few in number, even accounting for the tens of thousands of sable-robed accusators and functionaries gene-bred to serve them, and so rallied heavily upon static defenses and automated sentry guns for protection. Spearheaded by Land Raider phalanxes and Shadow Sword companies, the Fourth Legion surged forward, methodically eliminating all resistance in a storm of energy blasts, while behind them came wave after wave of mobile siege guns and artillery, whose pulverizing shell fire shattered and brought down mountain faces, burying gun bastions below in choking rubble. Such was the apocalyptic firepower of this rolling advance that it obliterated the Black Judges' vaunted defenses, yard by yard, erasing them from existence. It was when the Space Marines smashed their way into the lightless inner sanctums of the Night Courts, at the heart of the towering citadels of Obsidian, that the bitterest fighting took place. swept by batteries of lethal neutron rays and assailed by suicidal mobs of accusators armed with powered chain hammers, able to split even Legioness Astartes' battle plate. The casualties mounted, but the 4th Legion did not falter. Once the fanatics had been slaughtered, the leading elements of the assault wave forced their way bloodily on through abyssal chambers of nightmarish surgical theaters and abhorrent instruments of the justice these debased oppressors enacted, to their final confrontation with the Black Judges themselves. Sustained by their dark sciences, each of the Black Judges' armored life support frames were all but impervious to bolt or fire, while their razor scourges and ray cannon made each the equal of a Legioness Astartes' dreadnought in firepower. And there were hundreds of them. Against these mechanoid killers, the warriors of the 4th Legion would not give ground, although legionaries themselves fell in droves, cut into bloody hunks of meat, or incinerated in the molten coffins of their power armor. The darkness soon became a storm of muzzle flash and thunder, pierced by the screams of the dying and the high-pitched screeching of dieseled minds that had lived far beyond human sanity for centuries. As the battle raged on, the legionnaires took to using mounds of their own dead as cover from the sweeping hellish directing energy rays, and rallied again and again to charge the blackly glittering judgment engines, suffering the Black Judges' murderous fury to plant crack grenades or discharge point-blank melta blast to bring their enemies down. For an age, the battle hovered on a knife's edge. In the confines of the vaults and the corridors, the Black Judges had the advantage, and for every one of them that fell, a dozen or more Astartes also fell to pay the price. It was then that Perturabo struck. Having observed the unfolding battle, his superhuman intellect had discerned patterns and vulnerabilities amid the chaos and din of war, and had calculated the precise point at which to attack to the greatest effect. The Primarch himself struck the ranks of the Black Judges like a thunderbolt, throwing them into disarray. Like a vengeful god, he plowed into the heart of them, blasting and burning them, ripping their machine frames apart and tearing out the withered bodies from within with his own gauntleted hands. As the Black Judges reeled in shock and sought to realign their counterattack against this new and terrible threat, the gears of Perturabo's plan turned, and the elite heavy weapons support units of the 4th Legion, already known by their informal title of Havocs, advanced in precisely coordinated attack patterns that predicted their foes' response with preternatural accuracy. Isolating and blindsiding the Black Judges, the Havocs advanced implacably and ended their baleful rule, pronouncing sentence of their own with crossfire storms of autocannon shells and plasma bolts. By Perturabo's design, the enemy was crushed without mercy, and their remains were stripped of every valuable resource and technology. Wreckage and weapons flowed to Olympia, and the Black Judges' long-guarded secrets fell also to the newly renamed Iron Warriors and their master, who shared them with the Mechanicum in return for their aid. With the world stripped of its resources, the orbital shipyards of the Rock of Judgment, themselves relics of the lost human age of interstellar conquest, were finally set in orbit afresh around Olympia and set to work fashioning a new generation of warships under Perturabo's seal. You know, brother, this sounds like a tougher version of the Red Army from Terran 42.
What would that be?
Well, okay, so if you remember your history of Terran 42 and World War II in particular, the Red Army was
Russia,
massive.
Right?
What?
It was Russia, right?
Yes, no, that would be the Soviet Union, actually. At the time, it was no longer Russia. It was the USSR. But there is a difference. But
yeah, there is.
Anyways, the concept of the Red Army, they actually kind of went through this very similar thing, anyways, the decimation. So the guy who was running it at the time, Joseph Stalin, he ended up like removing and killing a lot of the command structure that was set up for the Red Army before World War II. He did this because he didn't trust any of them because they weren't his guys, and then he replaced them with his own guys. The problem was his own guys didn't know a lick about combat. So, and they were just like, well, we don't know what we're doing. And Stalin was like, well, you'll learn on the job. Good luck. And so the ones that survived did. And they actually turned out pretty good. Most of them did. But just this concept, anyways, of just continually moving forward and the aspect of We don't really care how many of your guys kill our guys. We have more of our guys, so we will just continue to march forward until you're done, until we stomp you into the ground.
Isn't part of their story the fact that when one of them fell, somebody else would pick up their weapon?
Okay, you're missing kind of a chunk of that. It was you're talking about Stalingrad, the Battle of Stalingrad, and this is yeah. So what you're talking about is that they set men up in pairs, and one guy had the gun, and the other guy had the bullets, and they were to charge the German lines. And then when they got close enough, the guy with the bullets was supposed to give it to the guy with the gun so that he could shoot the Germans. And there were guys there too, anyways, that also had like machine guns, but they weren't there anyways to attack the Germans. They were the commissars, and they sat behind all these rushing men so that if anybody tried to turn around, they'd use their machine guns and pop them down.
Yeah.
Yes, the Red Army wasn't the most well organized unit
or humane.
Yes, but as opposed to the Iron Warriors are actually very well regimented. I just that concept of we will continue to plow forward because there's more of us than there are of you, and we really don't care about the casualties. We will just stomp you into the ground. That's what kind of reminded me of the Red Army. But what do you think of these guys and their sole determination to just move forwards?
Well, part of it is that one of the things I find interesting is how they aren't just moving forwards; they're also buying time and giving necessary information to Perturabo when everything's happening. So it's not just them blindly attacking. They're also giving information at the same time, which is what allowed him to come in and basically be able to wipe them out like in a fraction of the time that it took them to actually take down a couple of them.
When I was reading this and I was looking into it, made me kind of wonder because if Perturabo had started off with his Havocs and himself anyways and charged forward, I'm pretty sure they still would have won, just simply because there were so many more of them. So my question is, I wonder if he did this on purpose. This was yet again another one of his tests to see if his legionnaires would follow him no matter what. What do you think?
It could have partially been that, but it could have also been
we need a distraction.
Well, I need to know this information because the Havocs are my guys.
The Havocs aren't as easily replaceable. That's really what it was down to.
Yes,
okay,
I know them really well and how to use them extremely well. And so I'll wait until I have the necessary, what I feel is necessary amount of information, not what they feel is necessary amount of information.
Right. And okay, I will add this anyways. So of all the so maybe you'll agree with me on this. Of all the Astartes that we've covered so far, and we've covered quite a few of them. I think this is only the second one we've covered that turned into Chaos Space Marines, right?
The
traitors, yeah.
Well,
okay. The first one, technically they are Chaos Space Marines, Alpha Legion, but if you want to know more about that, you can go ahead and look up our Alpha Legion. We still are.
Some are, some aren't. Maybe they are. Maybe they aren't.
Right.
I'm thinking they don't look after either of them particularly.
Right, but I mean, even of all the ones that we've talked about, I mean, the Space Marines just in themselves, anyways, are fairly stubborn, right? In the concept of war, these guys in my what do you mean?
The Night Lords, maybe not.
Well, we haven't
because
talked
they were known for constantly withdrawing unless they had massive amount of numbers on the others.
We haven't talked about the Night Lords yet, Yuksen. I'm talking about the ones that we've talked about so far.
Oh, well, in the case of Alpha Legion, they never would get in that position to begin with. So
you're not letting me actually get to my point, so you can either agree with me or not. Just let me get to it.
Okay.
I'm saying anyways that all Space Marines have kind of a stubborn streak about them. So it's this concept of if they get stuck in, they're gonna get stuck in. They're not good. It's not like the Astra Militarum anyways, where you have to worry about these guys like running away in fear. That's my point, right? You're just not going to get that with a Space Marine. They won't run away in fear. That's not in them. I think though that the Iron Warriors take this to like Jedi level, to a point anyways where it's like for instance, we talk about like for instance the Ultramarines, and they would be just like, okay, so it makes sense anyways if we do a falling retreat here, so that we can regroup and maybe hit them on the flank. The Iron Warriors, if somebody doesn't tell them anyways that okay, we're doing a falling retreat, they will stay there till the end of time.
Yeah.
And then some. So, okay. Oh, so okay. You do agree with me after you actually finally let me finish my thought process. Okay. Well, that's nice. Thank you, Yuksen. Speaking of which, you know what, brother? I know you prefer more modern era stuff. I mean, you know me. I'm a fan of the 30th and 31st millennium, while you're more of a fan of the 41st and 42nd millennium. So, do you by any chance have a post-heresy campaign that you wish to discuss?
Why, yes. I have found a wonderful campaign where the Iron Warriors fight their most hated enemy, the Imperial Fists. It could also be said this is the campaign that the Trident came to an end. This campaign is known as the Second Siege of Hydra, Cordatus.
So I know who the Trident are, but would you care to elaborate that for our dear listeners?
But of course, the Trident was a formation within the Iron Warriors Legion during the Horus Heresy. It consisted of 3 triarchs, senior legionnaires, usually warsmiths, who served as Perturabo's advisors in military matters and as part of his retinue. Triarchs served until they either died or lost Perturabo's confidence.
Brother, would you compare these to, like, for instance, Horus Lupercal's Mournival?
Or the Stone Men of Dorne, yeah. Which, for people who don't know what that is, you can check out my box.
Which one?
Which one?
There you go. Okay. You can check out my box. Moving on. It's like, wait, which one?
It's like, yes, you have to listen to all of them.
Sorry, we're getting a little sidetracked here, Yuksen. Let's keep going.
Now, the triarchs at the time of the Second Siege of Hydra Cordatus were Ketamor Forex, who was the first captain of the Iron Warriors, Warsmith Barban Falk, and Warsmith Kroger. During Abaddon the Despoiler's 13 Black Crusade in 999.m41, the Iron Warriors, under the command of Warsmith Barban Falk, attacked the Adeptus Mechanicus Forge World of Hydra Cordatus, which supplied weapons and other war material to the Imperium of Man at large. It was one of the few locations in the galaxy where the Mechanicus secretly stored its tithes of Space Marine gene seed. Alongside his chief rivals, Forex and Kroger, of the First and Second Grand Companies, respectively, Hanzo was one of the 3 champions of the Warsmith that laid siege to the large citadel and manufactorum complex known as Tor Cristo. Deep within the formidable Imperial citadel lay the stasis vaults, which contained the genetic material drawn from the Iron Warriors' most hated and ancient rivals, the Imperial Fists. The Iron Warriors desperately needed Astartes' pure gene seed to reconstitute their numbers, as the corrupting power of chaos tended to mutate their own gene seed to the point that it was unusable to replenish their ranks with new Chaos Space Marines. Hanzal was often belittled by his fellow Iron Warriors for having mixed gene seed, which consisted of spliced Iron Warriors and Imperial Fist genetic material. He was often referred to by his fellows as half-breed, due to his gene seed's mixed heritage. Despite their Imperial forces arrayed against them, including a large garrison of Astra Militarum troops, and even a small detachment of Titans of the Legio Ignatum, protecting the complex's precious contents. In the end, the Iron Warriors emerged triumphant. They defeated the Imperial forces defending Tor Cristo, as well as an entire company of Imperial Fists who had arrived as reinforcements to try and prevent the theft of their genetic legacy. Having greatly pleased the Chaos Gods through his monumental victory over the Imperium, the commanding warsmith, Barban Falk, was allowed to ascend to become a demon prince. Before his final ascension to demonhood, the warsmith appointed Hanzo as his successor, handing him command over his grand company.
Yuksen, I got a question for you. This doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. He's an Iron Warrior that actually tried to pursue demonhood?
Well, Barban Falk is kind of an anomaly. To keep things short, during the Horse Heresy, Falk was contacted by a mysterious demonic entity, which enabled him to utilize the Warp's entity's formidable power to command the Iron Warriors under his charge. After that, he pretty much was in that sort of state of, I'll do my duties so long as it grants me more favor with the Chaos Gods. Well, anyways, Falk then commanded Hanzo to take the stolen Imperial Fist Gene Seed back to the Iron Warriors' demon world of Medrangad, within the Eye of Terror. After the Iron Warriors withdrew from Hydra Cordatus, they bombarded the remains of the Citadel to dust, leaving behind a lone Imperial survivor to tell the tale of what had occurred.
You mentioned at the beginning of this Vox it was the end of the Trident. Well, you told us anyways what happened to that one guy, Falk. Well, what happened to the other two Triarchs?
Well, Forex, who by the end of the campaign had become unusually restless, was almost slain in a firefight with an Imperial Warhound class Titan, the Jor Divinu, which he vowed to hunt down and slay like a beast. During the final battle for Hydra Cordatus, Forex led his Terminators in attack against the Warhound, eventually managing to climb atop it and breach the war machine's cockpit. However, Forex's victory was cut short as the second Warhound of the pair, Defensor Fide, opened up on its brother Titan to prevent it from being desecrated by the enemy, obliterating Forex in a hail of turbo laser fire. Now, as for Kroger, well, he didn't get a warrior's death like Forex. You see, during the Hydra Cordatus campaign, Kroger took a female Imperial Guard captain, Lorana Utorian, as his personal slave. While attending to her new master's armor, the prisoner realized that his armor held the essence of a demon. Communing with it, Lorana learned that the creature had grown tired of Kroger's petty slaughtering and tempted the slave to don the demonic armor. Upon entering his personal chambers, Kroger was slain by his slave, now completely possessed by the creature that dwelt within his armor.
Kroger dies? Oh, man. I liked him. He was pretty important in the first siege of Hydra Cordatus.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I saw that you were going over the second siege of Hydra, so I actually wrote a short box on the first siege, which will be premiering on Saturday.
All hail Hydra, sorry. Cool. But the point I'm trying to make here is even though one guy is trying to become a demon prince, you'll notice the absence of chaos and demons.
Actually, I didn't notice that until you mentioned it, but yeah, that is kind of strange.
I also find it kind of interesting how instead of the guy going, I will continue to command you all, even as a demon prince, he just basically goes, peace out, and then he leaves.
Well, he kind of had to because he became a demon prince, which means that he's part of the Immaterium now, and that means he's kind of stuck there.
Yeah.
But the thing I find interesting about this, though, is like you said before, is that there's a huge absence, anyways, of chaos really being discussed here, or demons in particular.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like they do a whole lot with demons, which,
Well,
I mean, it makes sense.
Well, there's a couple of exceptions. Like one of them, for example, obviously the lesser demon kind of possessed the armor of Kroger.
Yeah, but it seems like, anyways, he wasn't too terribly happy with doing that. Hence why he got that slave, anyways, to muck him up. The end. But I hear what you're saying, though. It seems like the as opposed to, like, for instance, if you took, I don't know, like the Word Bearers, where everything they do, anyways, has to deal with chaos. I think the best way it was described to me, anyways, is that if you take the word bearers, who, like I said, anyways, they're kind of like a 10 when it comes to chaos undivided. They like fully and utterly, they're like devout chaos followers. And then you have underneath that, anyways, at about a 7 is probably the Black Legion. You have a lot more chaos followers than that, but their main guy, Abaddon, is straight up, anyways. He's like, I will accept any gifts you give me, but I'm not really going to be, manipulated by you.
Right.
And then you've got down towards the bottom, you have the Iron Warriors and then the Night Lords. They're kind of like a 3. They're like, we're okay with working with chaos, but it's more of like the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah.
Kind of concept that I'm kind of getting here. What do you think?
Yeah, pretty much. There have been cases, of course, they do have chaos sorcerers, so, there is that. But, that's part for the course because, they almost every single chapter, be it chaos or not, have some form of psyker user.
Right.
One of the ones that we exclude from that, of course, is the Black Templar, because the Black Templar are the Black Templar, and they'd rather kill anything that uses psychic force than...
Well, okay. Yeah, well, okay. You're talking a different animal, though. You're talking about, first off, a loyalist as opposed to a traitor. I think all the traitors actually have some sort of chaos sorcerers, right?
I think so.
I mean, don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure they all do. Well, do the Iron Warriors?
Yes, they have had some.
They have had some in the past? Okay.
Like there's one during a war that they had. It was actually a battle between where they got attacked by Harlequins.
Oh.
And the person in charge there was actually, I believe, a sorcerer, and actually the Iron Warriors got wiped out.
Well, this is all very interesting, and I kind of hear what you're saying, anyways. But there have been times, like you mentioned, anyways, the Iron Warriors. I mean, they're still Chaos Space Marines, which means that they do have ties still with the Ruinous Powers and the Demons of Chaos.
Right.
I mean, why? Take the Totus War that started in the 42nd millennium. See,
you're going past where I am.
Yeah, I'm stepping out onto a new branch here, Chief. I'm dipping my toe into the 42nd millennium. Now, this war didn't actually start with the Iron Warriors, but one of their brother traitor leaders. You see, when the Dark Cardinal of the Word Bearers, Corferon, offered what?
It's like, those brothers.
Hey, at least it's not the other guy, Erebus. At least it's not Erebus. It's Corferon. Corferon is also, pardon my French, a bastard, but he's at least not Erebus. Anyways,
I thought you were gonna say for some reason, was it Lucius the Eternal?
Yeah, well, no, he's not a word bearer though. He's a
that's an Emperor's
children guy. Yeah. Anyways, we're kind of getting far afield here. When the Dark Cardinal of the Word Bearers, Corferon, offered the Iron Warriors the chance to invade the Totus system in the Veritas subsector, the Iron Warriors warband, commanded by Warpsmith Etrogar, was tasked with containing the Imperial forces at Gradask, the system's formidable defended fortress world. The Warpsmith saw the outer planets of the Totus system as the perfect testing ground for newly perfected monstrosities, the Soul Harvesters. Now, a Soul Harvester is a massive spaceborne fortress factory created by the Warpsmiths of the Iron Warriors Legion. It consists of a central demon forge surrounded by snaking tentacles of hell-forged metal. These parasitic engines would embed themselves deep into the target planet's crust, their boarding tentacles disgorging Iron Warriors into weak points in their enemies' defenses. Meanwhile, the roaring furnace at the structure's heart would feed upon flesh, metal, and the souls of the slain in order to spew out fresh demon engine reinforcements from the world's own resources to support the heretic Astartes in combat. The fortress factory's massive tentacles could also be used to transport Iron Warrior troops down onto the world's surface.
Oh, it's like a spaceport invented from someone's nightmare. Got it.
Exactly. As far as Corferon was concerned, this assault was merely a diversion for his grand assault upon the system's capital world of Benediction. It would divide Imperial reinforcements and secure the Dark Cardinal the time he needed to oversee the destruction of Benediction and its rebirth as a shrine of the worship to the Chaos Pantheon. For his part, Etrigar had no interest in Corferon's grand ideological plans for the Totus system. A ruthless practical soul, Etrigar saw the rampant psychic disturbance unleashed by the Great Rift not as a spiritual awakening for humanity, but as an infinite source of power to be harnessed. This is the crux of why the Iron Warriors deal with the Runa's powers, not because they believe them to be gods that need to be worshipped, but they hold vast amounts of power waiting to be tapped.
So what you're saying is they think of them more as batteries opposed to deities?
Precisely. The Warpsmith entered Totus at the helm of the Soul Harvester Scarex Krond. With its vast alpine ranges and city-sized citadel fortresses, the fortress world of Gradesk was the most heavily defended planet in the Totus system, aside from Benediction itself. Its 7 great hive cities provided billions of souls for the Militarium, and its deep reserves of promethium and super dense minerals only added to Gradesk's critical value to the Imperium, making it an irresistible target for Etrigar. The Scarex Krond latched onto the surface of Gradesk like an immense parasite, thrusting pseudopods the size of hab blocks deep into the earth. These snaking tentacles pulverized their way through the rock and stone with siege drills and melta-cannons before bursting up from the earth within the walls of Gradesk's citadel fortifications. Heretic Astartes warriors marched forth, unleashing deadly volleys of bolt rounds into their unprepared foes. At the same time, Chaos Knights of House Commentus lumbered from the gatehouse of Scarex Krond, bellowing oaths of destruction as they set upon armored formations of the Militarium. Tank after tank was blasted into molten slag, and arcs of heavy bolter fire obliterated entire formations of Gradesk Illuminator infantry. All the while, the demon forge of Scarex Krond glutted itself upon the psychic aura of death and destruction. Blasted corpses and twisted wreckage of shattered war machines were shoveled into the furnaces as Etrigar and his fellow warpsmiths stoked the hellish fires with the souls of the slain. The Scarex Krond spewed out a tide of demon engines, from scuttling spider-like venom crawlers to hulking mauler fiends that galloped into battle, eager to mutilate or destroy. Soon the Loyalists were in full flight, retreating to the polar citadel of Fortress Resolve, where they prepared to make their final stand. Now, just as the cruisers of the Iron Warriors prepared orbital bombardments that would blast open vast vestiges of the resistance of Gradesk, the Chaos Fleet picked up a surge of warp disturbance. 2 enemy capital ships dropped out of orbit, black vessels bearing the stark white cross of the righteous Black Templars chapter. Castellan Dremos led a single strike force detached from the Rutherian Crusade, all that could be spared due to the Black Templars' extensive campaigns elsewhere across the Segmentum Solar on behalf of the other Shrine worlds. Fortunately, Dremos could also call upon a cadre of Imperial Knights from House Morton, commanded by the dour yet ferocious Sir Dirkwald.
Wait, you don't mean the Sir Dirkwald, the man who pilots the knight-errant known as Blackheart?
Yeah, actually, one and the same.
He's awesome! Did you know he recently completed his 1000th patrol on his house's homeworld of Kimdaria, which, according to House Morton's customs, now allowed him to serve off-world?
well, yes, I did. I mean, that's why he's here, after all.
I must say, I'm envious of his handlebar mustache. Bushy, yet the curls you could cut paper with.
Yes, well, moving on. Dremos scanned the latest tactical cogitations broadcast from Fortress Resolve. The situation was grim. The Iron Warriors were besieging the Polar Citadel, pouring demonic forces against its shield walls, while their siege tanks kept up a relentless bombardment. Yet, the true threat, Dremos quickly realized, was the Scarex Krond. Strikeforce Dawnhammer would deploy in a decisive attack upon the Soul Harvester. The warriors of House Morton would make for the surface of Gradesk in their fortified bulwark landers, the heavily armored vessels shrugging off reams of flak fire. Sir Dirkwald
And his amazing mustache.
led a frontal assault upon the Scarix Krond. While the knights drew the attention of the Chaos Defenders, squads of interceptors descended upon the Soul Harvester like living comets, burning through the upper atmosphere and locking coordinates upon the pulsing shell of the Scarix Krond. Castellan Dramos led the assault into the heart of the Scarix Krond, battling through the innards of the Iron Monster, alongside a retinue of veteran crusaders. Dramos and his command squad managed to detonate a cyclonic charge at the heart of the structure. The resulting warp explosion swept through the Soul Harvester, immolating loyalist and heretic alike, and blasting its assembled halls and charnel factories to atoms. The Scarix Krond convulsed and thrashed its metal tendrils like a wounded animal, but its demonic furnaces would not be snuffed out so easily. Dramos' sacrifice had brought the defenders of Gradask precious time, but the planet's fate still hung in the balance.
Well, what happened after this?
Well, they're actually still fighting to this very day, but this kind of gives you a concept of how the Iron Warriors deal with chaos.
How so?
Well, like you mentioned before, they kind of view chaos as like a battery. It's a powerful force that they can tap into and use to their advantage. So instead of looking at them as more like deities that need to be worshipped, it's more along the lines of we can tap this power and we can use it to better our warriors and do better, in combat. The only thing that I would think of anyways that they take a little bit more to extreme than any of the other legions is probably the demon siege weapons.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of right up their alley.
I do have to mention this Scarix Krond and the whole methodology behind it sounds very tyrannid-like.
How so?
We'll consume the resources and then regenerate and repurpose it to deal out more damage, to conserve and collect more.
Yeah, okay, I could see that. I guess,
Except for its bioforms for the case of tyrannids.
yeah, and not only that, but I think the tyranids, anyways, it's more, like you said, anyways, it's more of like biomatter that it's sucking up. This is ironically, anyways, they're sucking up all the stuff that tyranids would normally not use.
Well, except for
sucking up
human bodies,
souls and like war machine metal and stuff like that. The only thing that they both do, like you said, anyways, is like bodies that get tossed in there. But yeah, it'd be kind of interesting if you had this thing on one side and then one of those the tyrannid bioforming thing on the other side. What would end up happening? It'd be kind of interesting. I mean, because
the chance would no longer exist. That's what would happen.
Well, yeah, I mean that would be the conclusion actually if either one of them was there. But if they both ended up, because I think it would almost be like they both would bypass each other.
Yeah. Well, like I said, because then there would be no more bioform and then also no more resources, period. So it'd pretty much be an empty husk.
Right. Well, yeah, not only that, but I mean, we will eventually talk about the Tyranids, but they got this like weird wonky thing when it comes to the warp. I kind of briefly talked about it last week when I talked about the Orpheus Salient, but it's almost like the Tyranids are blanks, all of them. They just,
and yet not at the same time, so they can be.
Yeah, I mean, they can't be affected by chaos. And then they also, anyways, they affect the warp. They like nullify the warp. But it's not like blanks, anyways, where a powerful enough blank can actually blow somebody up that is chaos. It's not like that.
Well, they can still suffer psychic damage via like the psyker casting lightning onto them or psychic spell on them. In comparison to a blank where it's just like,
it just kind of fizzles out. Yeah. But it's weird. The Tyranids are weird when it comes to chaos. It's quite frankly, anyways, if I was a chaos warband leader, anyways, I'd be far more concerned about the Tyranids than I would the Imperium. Just in how that whole thing with chaos mucks about it. But I think we're going down a rabbit trail here, Yuksen.
Right.
So, what do you think of the Iron Warriors as a whole, Yuksen?
Personally, I think they're one of my favorite chapters when it comes to traitor legions. Of course, excluding Alpha Legion, which, as we both came to the conclusion, isn't actually one, most likely.
I love how there's that very end, anyways. It isn't one, most likely.
Well, we both think they're renegade, but
yeah.
others say yes, they are, and some say no, they're loyalists.
Well, I think we both kind of agree, anyways, that of all the Chaos Space Marine chapters, we kind of lean more towards the ones that are Chaos Unified, as opposed to the ones that follow a distinct entity of the Ruinous Powers.
Well, for me, it probably goes around not Nurgle or Slanesh.
So the Emperor's Children of the Death Guard are just kind of right out.
Yes.
And I'm assuming the Night Lords are probably right along with them.
Yes. Well, they're all psychos, so
The Night Lords kind of like, they kind of crack me up. But anyways, go ahead.
I think the Thousand Suns will be very interesting once we get to them. And the World Eaters will probably be also more closer to one of the ones that we like, but that's because their character seems to be pretty obvious just by their name.
Pretty straightforward. They are Chaos's version of orcs. I mean, that's probably the best way to describe it.
They are Corn's boys.
Yep. To me, and you know what? It was funny because we normally have meetings about this before we actually, do these boxes. But we were kind of talking about the Iron Warriors and the way that they're kind of portrayed as they're kind of like this slow, unimpeded marching forwards. I kind of mentioned anyways jokingly that they would be like the orcs if the orcs weren't, if they were more uniformed. Just the steady advance. I could see the orcs doing that if they actually had any sort of control over the charge factor or the log factor.
Not to say that the Iron Warriors don't use other tactics. Like, for example, I believe during the siege of Terra, Perturabo actually used some of his men just as a blunt striking force and then actually used some of his other men to sweep in behind while they were focused. So it's not like they're completely like just charge straight forwards. That's all we do. But
I mean, and we will get into this, especially next week, because next week we're going to be talking about siege tactics. But I mean, they're all time. I mean, can you think of any other tactic that they use more often than the rolling barrage? That's kind of their gig. I mean,
well, that or they just bomb them until they're gone.
The rolling barrage. Okay, so apparently we're going to educate Yuksen next week too.
Bombing, for example, is
the rolling barrage.
Than the rolling barrage,
World War I, in Terran 42. Or are you talking about orbital bombardments?
Like orbital bombardments, carpet bombing. I thought the rolling barrage is where you would fire and then you'd have people coming up after the shells have dropped and continuing forwards like that. Not just bombing them Kingdom Come with just artillery shells till the end of time.
The easiest way to describe the rolling barrage is you've got a whole line of artillery, they blast, and then the artillery slowly starts moving forwards.
Okay.
So it's just this wall of artillery anyways, just chugging its way down a battle line.
Yeah, see, that wasn't what I was envisioning. What I was envisioning, for rolling when I was talking about blowing them forever would be like, for example, them taking a position on top of a hill with some fixed weapons and just keep shooting away at the enemy until there's nothing left of the fortress or whatever the heck it was that they were in.
and like I said, definitely next week anyways, we will definitely be getting into siege warfare because that is kind of the bread and butter of the Iron Warriors. But I don't know. They're interesting on the aspect that they do seem to have like I said, the structure anyways of just this massive unit anyways that is just slowly moving forwards, and there's no way you can stop them. They will just keep coming until they've accomplished whatever they need to accomplish. unless you can actually break them, which is, as we've discovered anyways, pretty hard to do. I mean, when they tussle anyways with the Imperial Fists, it's always just kind of a bloodbath because they both have kind of the same concept. It's just the indestructible force meets the immovable object. I mean, that's always what ends up happening when they fight the Imperial Fist.
Though one of the things that is interesting is how their pride on their building of forts also causes them to suffer greatly as well.
What do you mean?
Oddly enough, for the Iron Warriors. Because you know how I mentioned that the Harlequins attacking those guys? Well, they're just like, we will stay in our citadel and we will be fine. Perfectly fine. And then they end up finding out slowly that different areas of their wall just started becoming silent. And they're like, oh, maybe it not be fine. And so, but their whole viewpoint is we will be good as we're in here. And they stayed in there until there really wasn't that many left.
Well, that's the problem. Okay. So there's lots of ways anyways to bring down a fortress. The Harlequins, the Eldari, their personal favorite way of doing things anyways is being sneaky. It's like,
well,
it's like
Eldari, not so much. They are very much fast in out.
Well, okay.
I mean, they have.
Let me rephrase.
They have banshees. Okay.
Let me rephrase. The Eldari Rangers are very much, anyways, or the Drukhari, especially the Drukhari. Very much, anyways. We sneak in, we kill everybody, we sneak out, kind of thing. Or the Raven Guard. That's why, anyways, I've always found it kind of interesting, anyways, when the Raven Guard end up tussling with the Iron Warriors. And the Iron Warriors, though, I will say, anyways, when that does happen, have kind of it's almost like they don't quite know what to do with them. because they know that their tactics are completely different, anyways, than what the Iron Warriors are expecting. They're expecting like the Imperial Fists. They're going to bomb the crap out of us. They're going to try to take the walls. And the Raven Guard just don't do that. They're just like, well, we'll fly up on top of the walls and then sneak in and try to kill all of you.
A wonderful day with the Raptors if they ever meet up with them.
Yeah, or the Raptors, or what was the other one that the other secondary chapter that you did?
Which one?
Dark Hunters, I want to say.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
White Scar Assassins. No, White Scar.
Yeah, the White Scar Foundlings. Yeah, but they normally do significantly better, anyways. When it's, they do better when it's against, like, for instance, like we said, anyways, people that have very
Ultramarines.
Tactics. The Ultramarines, yes. The Imperial Fists, the Black Templars, the guys, anyways, that fight very formationally. And they're like, okay, we know how to deal with this. It's these other guys. Like I said, the Raven Guard, the Rangers, like you were saying, anyways, or sorry, Raptors.
Raptors. Like who see things as guidelines, the general rules.
Yeah. They probably would do pretty decently against, like, for instance, the Minotaurs and probably the Carcrodons too.
But it depends.
They just, when it comes to like obtuse tactics, or the team actually that would just every time destroy them, this has to be the Death Watch. Just the way, anyways, they fight. They don't fight as like chapters. They fight as kill teams.
Yeah.
So, just that concept, anyways, is like, okay, you five are gonna sneak in that way, and you five are gonna sneak in that way, and then when we're done.
And randomly one of them will be a Terminate, and you are one Terminator. We will have a homing device at this location, so you can just pop up in between all of them and just wipe them out.
But and we will come to find out, anyways, next week that they do actually have plans against these kind of more obtuse legionnaires that fight against them, but they're not nearly as, I guess, comfortable.
Flexible
fighting with against them. Yes, flexible. They're that whole iron within, iron without. Last I checked, iron's not the most flexible thing on the planet, or in the universe. So,
what if you heat it up to extreme temperatures? No.
Yeah. Well, if it's already been forged a lot of times, anyways, it will just snap. But yeah, anyways. And on that horrible note, we're out of time. Now, join us next week, like I said before, as we talk about the Iron Warriors and what they're great at. Siege warfare.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this box. Feel free to like, follow, subscribe, and comment. And don't forget to check out the shop. We got some cool stuff there, like clothes, pillows, and hats.
Yuksen, I was thinking anyways that maybe we actually get the cannons out for this next one, because we are talking about siege warfare. And then I remembered anyways that we have a couple of people that probably don't do well with cannons. And we just got the library back up again. I don't know. What do you think? You think we can bring the cannons out to do some demonstrations, or do you think the boys might get into them and we'd have to start back at square one with the library?
You know, about that,
Uh-huh.
I noticed that you've been talking to them in the music library.
Huh?
Yes.
Oh, well, okay. Yes. Blagrot, anyways, kept trying to eat my records. He said they kept looking like, anyways, this bug that he knew on this one particular planet. This weird black disc-like bug. And I said, no, that's not what it is. Drop it. That's why you haven't seen Blagrot in a while. I decided, anyways, to launch him out in his own spacesuit, anyways, and he's now orbiting our library. Calm down a little bit, anyways. I'll bring it back. But still, little bugger, he ate my original Black album. You know how hard that is to get? God. Well, anyways, you seem to be doing fine, anyways, with Snot Rock. You think you can keep him away from the cannons?
No, I wasn't able to keep him out of the audio library. How would I be able to keep him away from the cannons? I don't even know how he got into the audio library.
I don't know. They're sneaky.
Well, they are orcs.
I don't understand how. Yes, I know exactly. They're orcs. How are they this sneaky? Oh, anyways,
Not like they painted themselves purple or anything.
yeah, that's true. Oh, and by the way, Yuksen,
Yes.
don't forget the rabbits. You thought I
What is
forgot?
you don't forget the bears.
Ah,
The
No.
bears.
the bears.
Right. Also, don't forget to put your questions in the comments so we have a boatload of them for a Q&A at the end of the month.
Have a great day, and as always.
Until next time, this is Zeckthar,
And Yuksen.
signing off.